Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. Welcome to Propaganda of Toxic Feminism, the series in which I expose and debunk falsehoods, misconceptions and outright lies spread about the men's rights movement. So let's get stuck into it. Okay, so there isn't much left of the cake article, so let's finish it off once and for all before moving on to something else.
Do women rape men? Yes, of course. We, as feminists, aren't denying that such a phenomenon exists, but there are mounds of reports illustrating that rape against women on campuses, at home, and by people that they trust are men by an astronomical majority.
This once again comes down to the definition and context of the word rape. For example, if we were to say that a female who has had a couple of drinks of her own free will engages in consensual sex with a man is in fact a rape victim, as she had alcohol in her system, even though everything she did was consensual and she didn't consider herself a rape victim. If we class her as a victim anyway, then we get a very high percentage of female rape victims. I'm looking at you, Mary Koss. And if at the same time we exclude male victims who are forced to penetrate as actual rape victims, even if that male was passed out drunk and in no way could give consent, if we start with an inaccurate and biased definition from the start, based on feminist gender stereotypes and fear-mongering, if we do all these things and more, then we shouldn't be surprised we have mainly female victims. Let me give you a scenario. Imagine a small town with a racist cop as the sheriff, and this racist cop routinely gives tickets to African Americans, even for the smallest of offences, while at the same time letting whites off with just a warning, a smile and a nod for exactly the same offences. Do you think the statistics of that town's driving offences based on race would be an accurate depiction of reality? What if the town implemented additional mandatory driver education only for African Americans based on these faulty statistics? What about ad campaigns targeting only African American drivers? Would that be fair? Of course it wouldn't. If you start out with a faulty, biased view of the world, then your conclusions are going to be faulty. Next.
MRAs who barge into a conversation to scream, "What about the men?" are completely dismissing the fact that an epidemic exists simply so they can wield the spotlight for a couple seconds.
Wield the spotlight for a few seconds. You mean as opposed to actually talking about all victimizers and all victims, instead of basing victimhood on gender. Is that what you mean by wield the spotlight? Next.
Their arguments really have nothing to do with helping the men that do experience rape.
To help male victims of rape, we as a society first need to acknowledge male victims of rape. And to get society to acknowledge male victims of rape, we need to actually talk about male victims, which is the very thing she is criticising us for. Next.
They don't want to make the shelters for battered men.
I guess she's never heard of Earl Silverman. But if feminism is there to help men too, which is what we are constantly told by feminists, then where are all the feminist shelters for battered men? Feminists outnumber us, have access to more funding, have more influence in the government and the media, yet they have done nothing. Next.
They laugh at a man who states he was molested at their conference, and one of their conference speakers made a rape joke about his son.
So I asked Dean Esme to comment on this, as not only was he at the conference in question, but also one of the organisers. Dean replied with,
"Both of these claims are hideously abusive lies, toxic because they are meant to be painful when we hear them and not just hurt our bad name. Yes, There was a weird man at the press conference on day 0, the pre-conference, and he was flirting with people and feeling them up and apparently mentally ill. A sleazy reporter at the Metro Times in Detroit wrote up a mocking story telling people he was sexually molested at the conference. The reporter didn't even stay for the end of the conference or ask any of us about it, so we didn't notice the guy until the next day when he was there doing it some more. So we felt really bad, but we had to ask him to leave. And in his speech to the conference, Paul Allen that night mentioned the man and, in tears, noted that he wished we and the rest of society could do more to help the mentally ill man like that. This is the kind of hateful abuse and mischaracterization we got all along the way. At the ICMI we also had a homeless man who bicycled all the way across country, then got his bike stolen just because he wanted to be there. No one in the press would cover that. Instead they just came for a few hours, found something to make fun of, and left. Well, that's what most of the press did. A few did their jobs well. As for the rape joke about his son, that is an even more deeply hurtful claim on multiple levels. A speaker mentioned his deep worry for his son and gave a nervous laugh, noting that his son is kind of small and easily picked on, and others in the audience laughed nervously, not sure how to react. You can go listen to it. It's in the speech by Fred Jones on Paul's YouTube channel. You may, and I hope you do, quote this email in its entirety. And I just repeat the observation that these claims are not just meant to poison the well against men's rights activists. They are also a form of psychological warfare meant to hurt us and make us waste time explaining what actually happened, and looking defensive. Go look at the actual events, and these are obviously not just ideas these people are confused by. This is intentional smearing. This is intentional hateful bigoted agitprop.
Next.
These people don't care about the struggles of male rape victims.
Which is funny, because the only time feminists bring up male rape victims is when they are trying to score points against the men's rights movement. Next.
Their struggle to make this into a conversation about an alleged widespread systematic misandry is quite ridiculous and shameful. If they want to help men, they need to start by taking rape seriously instead of just looking for things to pin on women and feminists.
Once again, let me stress, feminists ignore female victimizers. We are not attacking women. We are not saying only females do bad things. We are simply trying to look at all victimizers and all victims, regardless of gender, the whole picture, in other words, and that means pointing out that women do bad things as well. Next.
What is the core goal of men's rights activism? Is it dignity and respect for the male gender? Is it working? To this day, I think we are still trying to figure out what these so-called activists have as their goal.
That's probably because you spend all your time falsely associating trolls with us, instead of trying to understand our actual goals. Next.
They make a lot of claims as to what they are seeking, but their actions truly illustrate otherwise. Outlined on A Voice for Men, they claim that they want to obtain a world where men aren't expected to register for the draft once they turn 18. They don't want fathers to lose out on custody rights because of court biases. They don't want their sons to be forced into circumcisions. They don't want men to be ignored when it comes to sexual violence.
Hold on. Didn't she just say a minute ago that she is still trying to figure out what these so-called activists have as their goal? It seems she does know what at least some of our goals are. Next.
The thing is, feminists understand these issues and have been working to fight them for a significant period of time.
And yet very little has changed. And just because feminism is working on these things, or at least claims to be, it doesn't mean other groups cannot work on them as well. Why should feminism hold a monopoly? Next.
We want equal pay for women, for doing the same job, as well as equal opportunities for obtaining meaningful professions.
Fantastic. You've already had it for 50 years. Could we possibly talk about those male rape victims now? Next.
This would eliminate the need for an outstanding alimony check. We want fathers to be seen as capable of raising children as well. We want an end to forced genital mutilation for all sexes. These are things that have been in the feminist agenda for decades, but for some reason, MRAs feel the insatiable need to fight us every step of the way instead of hearing us out.
Oh, look, we've heard you all right. We've heard you loud and clear. You scream patriarchy backfiring and then sit on your hands and do nothing. Time for a change. Next.
What's with the vitriol spewing MRAs? Are they just harming their own cause? We've had many MRAs claim that there is a stark difference between them and the ones that just want to come out and troll. But to be honest, if we let them have discussions with us and our supporters long enough, they just get violent. We've had MRAs leave about a typed page's worth of arguments that have names and swear words laced within the sentences. They really do discredit themselves and their cause by becoming belligerent.
Oh no, not swear words.
Do some research, because the site I mentioned, Return of Kings, which is a fucking loser sort of pickup artist thing, that they said they don't like men's rights activists, right? And because I called them men's rights activists. You know why I called them that, you fucking brain-dead little knuckle-dragging shitheads? Because anyone who's not a fucking circle jerk, MRA, PUA, fuckwit, can't fucking tell the difference, you fuckwits! You're the same! You fucking reprehensible scum! Any rational person thinks you're fucking worthless, okay? No one fucking cares! Oh my god! And actually, the ones who actually said, he's not an MRA, he's not a men's rights activist, he's a pickup artist, like that's fucking better! It's like, oh my god, you are so fucking socially dysfunctional and incapable of seeing women as humans. You have to go for psychologically abusive tricks to try and force them to have sex with you. You sad fucks! You sad fucks! I shouldn't call them that, because there is a town called Sad Fuckville where all the sad fucks live, and they made all the MRAs and PUAs move the fuck away! Because they said we might be sad fucks, but we're not MRAs or PUAs! Go away! True story.
Angry Aussie. And guess what? He's not an MRA. No, he's actually a feminist. No, but go ahead and tell us about some random trolls who may or may not be MRAs swearing on Facebook. But, of course, totally ignore the exact same behaviour amongst certain feminists. I mean, that's typical, isn't it? It only counts when our side does it. Next.
What is the worst type of MRA you've come across? Oh, we have dozens of pictures saved up. They get pretty bad, even anti-Semitic.
So let's have a look at the examples they picked from these dozens of pictures saved. After all, we would expect them to pick the very best evidence that they have against men's rights, wouldn't we? That would make sense, wouldn't it? So let's have a look at the first one. It reads, "Make no mistakes about it. The major cause of single motherhood is women's unwillingness to be submissive. Not that they can't be submissive, but they refuse to be submissive to the right man. How do we know that women can be submissive? Well, they submit to their bosses at work, they submit to their teachers at school, they submit to judges, police officers, the lawmakers. All these are positions of power and authority that they willingly submit to. But when it comes to their man, they rebel. And if they do submit to a man, it's usually the wrong man. It's usually the man who doesn't have standards, order and discipline. It's usually the man that they can have a good time with. This man places no standards of behaviour, conduct or appearance on women. All he's concerned with is pleasure, leisure and fun. This is the man that women choose to submit to. There is no such thing as a woman being tricked or deceived by a man. No, she chose to submit to a worthless man, thus rebelling against a decent man. Single motherhood was her choice." Okay, so the obvious question here is, what the fuck does this have to do with men's rights? Where does he mention any men's rights issues? Nowhere. But out of the dozens of examples, I'm sure the next one will definitely, without a doubt, be an MRA.